What's good, people? It's your boy Persona, gaming with Persona, and one half of the What's Up PlayStation podcast crew. And I'm coming at you guys with my Valkyrie Elysium review. I was really excited to put this review out. Honestly, I had a lot of fun playing this game. This really has been the only game that I've played this week, right? So I was like, you know what? Let's finish out the week and start off the month of October by putting out this Valkyrie Elysium review. I got a lot of other videos that's going to be dropping soon as well, but I really wanted to get this Valkyrie Elysium review out there on the channel because this game really resonates with me, and it really is a great experience that we're going to be talking about. So there's three things we're going to be touching on today. We're going to touch on the pros, we're going to touch on the cons, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my overall score for the game. I do appreciate y'all, so sit back, relax, and I hope you guys enjoy this review. So what is Valkyrie Elysium? Valkyrie Elysium is a game developed by Soleil Interactive and published by Square Enix. It released on September 29th, 2022, but if you bought the digital deluxe edition, it released on Monday of this week. So, that's why I know some people are probably going to be watching this video like, geez, Persona, how did you beat it so quick? It's not a short game. It's because I've been playing the game since Monday. So that's part of, that's a big reason why, the game released Thursday and I'm putting a review out on Saturday, right? So don't be alarmed if you're one of those people that's worried that this is a very short game. I personally don't think it is, right? Especially if you're going to be doing the side missions or the sub quests and doing the main story. If you power through the main story, then I can see, all right, this is, I can see where you might feel like, oh, well, it's a short game. But if you're actually doing the content of the game, it's pretty lengthy. So, for me, my completion time was about 35 hours by the time I beat the game. And I only got one ending because there's multiple endings in the game that you can get. So, keep that in mind. So let's talk about story. The story of Valkyrie Elysium starts where you, Valkyrie, are created by Odin, the Allfather, and you're tasked with trying to collect all the souls so that Odin could regenerate his power. And the reason why Odin is so weak or, can't do it himself is because he had a very devastating fight with Fenrir. And if for those that know, your Norse mythology, if you're familiar with that stuff, you know that Fenrir and Odin are like mortal enemies, right? So, there was a big battle that happened between Fenrir and Odin, which brought upon Ragnarok, right? And so through Ragnarok, it caused the devastation of the world. And so you as Valkyrie have to go around and collect all these souls because the fight with Fenrir left Odin severely weak. In terms of the story design for this game, I really liked the very straightforward approach that they took, right? How some games tend to overstay their welcome. I don't think Valkyrie Elysium does that, right? You essentially have one base of operations, which is in Valhalla, where you'll be able to choose all your missions, choose any of the side missions and things like that. A lot of that happened, well, not a lot, all of it happens there, right? So that's really the only place where you can choose and do your missions and go out on missions, and that's where Odin is and all that stuff, right? But then even with the missions itself, it's only 9 chapters, and then it's like a slew of subquests, which you'll pick up the subquest along the route of you doing the main story. So as you're going into each level, there'll be little icons on the map where you'll speak to different souls, and that's how you pick up the side missions, right? And like I said, it doesn't overstay its welcome. I like that. I really like that approach with this game. And you can tell they were just trying to get in, tell the story, and get out, which I can appreciate, right? So in terms of the story or mission design, I should say, I was definitely happy with what they put into the game. Short, sweet, and to the point. There's some interesting characters in Valkyrie Elysium. If we're talking about the king of Asgard, the king of it all, Odin, which is a very proud man, right? He comes off as a very proud and noble person. Or Fenrir, which her interactions are very limited in this game, but when you do interact with her, it is very, very good, in my opinion. I think Fenrir left a pretty good mark. But then we get into some of the other more interesting characters, like Armand, which is a traveler that you come across quite a few times through the story. And there's a bigger reason for that, which, you know, obviously I'll save for when you actually play the game. And then we come across another Valkyrie, might even call her a fallen Valkyrie, Hilde, which you actually come across her quite a bit in this game. And she is and you fight her, like you're fighting this Valkyrie. She's against Odin, and you know, she's trying to get you to see the light, whatever that means, right? Then we have the Enheriars, which Enheriars are pretty much ascended souls within Valkyrie Elysium, and they ascend toward these. They pretty much are chosen by Valkyrie to work with her and to help her complete her mission of, you know, collecting souls and collecting these mystical weapons and all these other things that you have to do within the game. So the 4 souls that you get is Egon, I should say, who he is a noble knight, and he has the power element of electricity. Then we have Siphon, where he is the ice element spirit. Then we've got Christopher, which is a holy spirit, or holy element, I should say, spirit, or light element spirit. Very noble. Then the last but not least, we've got Taika, right? Like you see right here with the gameplay, shout out to Taika. Definitely one of my favorites. And Taika is obviously the fire element spirit. And through the game, you come across these characters, these Enheriars, and you essentially, you know, you ascend them as Valkyrie and have them work with you. And they pretty much are with you in your journey from beginning to end throughout the whole game. And it's pretty interesting how they tie in the Enheriars storylines and kind of what you have to do to get them. All of that is tied into the actual storytelling of the game as well, which I think is pretty interesting. So, you know, shout out to Soliel for that as well. I thought they did a great job there. So with this being an action RPG, I'm sure what you're also wondering is, well, Persona, how are the RPG elements of this game? Is there armor? Is there different weapons? Can you level it up? Is there a skill tree? I mean, give us the details, Persona. I got you. So with this being an action RPG, it does have some pretty interesting RPG elements, right? So there isn't really a whole lot of armor per se that you need to be grinding for or get through this game. So the main thing that you're really going to be focused on when it comes to playing Valkyrie Elysium and the RPG elements is the skill tree and your weapons and runes and your divine your skills, your Valkyrie skills or divine skill arts and things like that, right? So let's start with the skill tree. The skill tree is, I think, a very typical skill tree where you've got your attack skill tree, you got the defender skill tree, you got the support skill tree, and obviously, like the names would explain, they all, you know, obviously attacks boost your attacks. It boosts your physical attack and your magic attack. Defense skill tree helps with, you know, upping your defense against, you know, magical attacks, against physical attacks and things like that. And obviously the support skill tree is what you would use to level up your life bar, your soul gauge, and your arts. With your Valkyrie arts, right, it's typically what you would think, right? So you get fire abilities, you get lightning abilities, you get ice abilities, you get darkness abilities, you get light abilities or holy abilities, right? And the reason why you're getting all of these elemental abilities is because a lot of the enemies that you're going to come across within the game are going to have certain types of weaknesses to certain elements, right? And when you exploit that weakness, that will put them in like a dazed state, right? And allows you to kind of just get some free hits in, right? And you'll see a bar on top of their name as well, where it will kind of fill up as you hit them with that elemental ability and put them in that dazed state. So you'll see all that happening and kind of be able to track that. So the arts, I think, are really good, right? They're very flashy, very beautiful, flashy looking arts. And they also have different levels. So you could get a level 1, level 2, a level 3 Valkyrie art, right? And, obviously the higher the level, the more damage it does. But also the higher the level, the more art gauge it takes away as well. So you got to keep that in mind. Obviously the art gauge you're able to refill by going, by just fighting, right? It fills up automatically through fighting. But you can also use a ruin that would also speed up how much quicker the bar would fill. And speaking of ruins is what you would expect, right? So, you've got your physical attack boost, your magic attack boost, physical defense boosters, magical defense boosters. You've got arts, magic arts, soul gauge, I should say, restoration speed, art gauge, restoration speed, and all those different things. The runes are really straightforward, right? But I will say, and this kind of will lead us into the whole weapons portion as well. Certain runes work better with certain weapons over others, right? So for example, some of the weapons that you can get in the game are one-handed swords. You also get the fencing weapon, the rapier. You also get the staff, like a heavy staff and a light staff, right? And you also can get a heavy sword and a light sword. So one of the heavy swords that you use in the game, it says it in the description, it's more of a magic type of sword where it actually would benefit from having more magic points put into it, which is where the runes would come into place, because obviously you're putting the runes on the weapons. And so putting that extra magic on that weapon benefits it. It makes it hit even harder, right? And so, it's certain things like that. And then obviously certain other weapons would benefit more so from like physical attack and things like that, right? And one of the cool things about weapons as well is that when you level up your weapons, you also get new abilities. Listen, and I'm going to save this for the combat portion of the video, but trust me when I tell you, leveling up your weapons and unlocking those abilities, it makes it very, very fun. You can do some really dope combos. If you follow me on Twitter, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And even you can see it here in the video. You see me fighting Christopher here. You're gonna be seeing me doing some really nice combos and nice mix-ups and what's not with her. So definitely level up your weapons. That's important. So speaking of combat and leveling up your weapons, let's get into that, right? So combat in this game is extremely fun. Like it's so fluid, it's so tight. It is very fun to fight in this game, right? Especially being an action RPG, it is extremely fun. So one of the cool things about the combat, obviously you've got your sword abilities that you would use with Valkyrie. You're also using her arts abilities, her elemental arts abilities. But one of the cool things is that the Inheriars that we were talking about earlier, so Egon, Christopher, Sion, or Siphon, and Taika, they actually fight with you as well. Now, you can't summon all 4 of them to fight at the same time, but one of the cool things is that you can, there's a certain type of setting in the game as you progress through the story that you'll start getting more of and you level up your skills. There's a setting in the game that will allow you to actually set certain conditions for auto summons for certain Inheriars. So for example, if you do a finisher move, it'll spawn an Inheriar. If you get knocked down, it'll spawn an Inheriar, right? If you do a guard break, it'll spawn an Inheriar, right? But then there's also a dedicated button as well on your controller where you'll be able to summon certain Inheriars for certain situations, right? So say you're going against a bunch of enemies that are weak to fire, you can summon Taika to come out. She'll fight for 15, and you can set the time that your Inheriar is out as well. 15, 30, and 60 seconds. Now, the more you keep them out, the more soul gauge is going to get drained. So keep that in mind when you're setting up the time frames for your different Inheriars. And obviously they'll do the elemental damage to enemies and fight alongside you for a little bit, and that'll help you with, like, you know, getting some of the aggro taken off of you, right? But also it will help with getting them in that dazed state that we was talking about earlier, so you can, you know, go to town, right? And also one of the cool things about it as well is, so you can only summon two Inheriars at once on the battlefield, but whichever is the first Inheriar that you spawn, your sword takes on that elemental damage. So say, like, again, if I summon Taika, right, and I'm fighting against enemies that are weak to fire, my sword is going to inflict that weakness as well, which is also going to fill that bar and do more damage to them, which is also really cool. So there's a bit of a strategy that goes on, especially if you're playing on hard difficulty. It's hard difficulty, they're going to definitely throw enemies at you, which is what I played on. But there's a strategy, and really you have to play a bit methodical here when you're fighting enemies. You can't really mash in this game. You really do have to be very methodical on your approach with fighting different enemies, because every enemy is not the same, right? And even with the different weapons in the game that you get, certain enemies are weaker to certain weapon types that you use, or a certain weapon. So again, if you're using the rapier, there's a ton of enemies in the game that's weak to that. If you're using the first sword, I forgot the name of the first sword that you get, but if you're using that sword, you're going to do more damage to the enemy on top of the damage that you're doing with the element and all that other stuff, which is just going to all be in your favor. The combat in this game, like I said, is really, really fun, especially when you start mixing in your own combos from the weapons with the Inheriars and how they're fighting, and with the Valkyrie divine arts that you're using as well. When you couple all of that together, it really makes for a really nice recipe of just fun, in my opinion. I really enjoy the combat in this game, and if you're someone that loves action RPGs, I can definitely see you in really, really enjoying this combat. I think it's awesome. So, you know, kudos to Soyo for you know, making really fun combat, man. I think it's dope. Well, guys, everything can't be all good, right? We got to get into some of the negatives for me personally, and really, I think there's only two main negatives for me, right? Those two negatives is game performance and level design. So I'll touch on game performance first, because I'm definitely playing this game on PlayStation 5. And performance for the game was great, like overall. Like the overall performance of the game I thought was great. It ran 60 frames per second. You know, the game I thought looked very beautiful and things like that. But there were certain areas in the combat sequences where if you got a lot of, you know, especially if they're spawning some of the bigger enemies at you, and there's a lot of like elemental powers going off from your Inheriars and the enemy and all this other stuff, you can see some dips here and there with it, which I definitely felt was you know, a little disappointing, especially, you know, being on the PS5. You know, and again, I think that's something that can be patched. Now, was it game breaking? No, it wasn't game breaking. It wasn't crazy or nothing like that. But, you know, I do have to point that out, because, you know, I wouldn't want you to pick this game up and then you see it and then you say, well, Persona, why didn't you tell me about this? So, you know, keep in mind, you might run into certain little frame dips here and there in the combat while you're fighting. And again, it's what, you know, like, for instance, you know, I had like, it's this firestorm that I would do. And then if I summon Taika and she does her fire caress, right? And then the enemy is doing water bombs and all this other stuff. So much happening on the screen that it's causing, like, you know, the game to kind of be like, oh shit, you know. So, you know, that might happen. The other thing too that I was really disappointed about, the level design is very bland. It's extremely bland. I wish they would have put more thought into the level design. And I get that you're trying, you know, it's Ragnarok, the world is dying off and things like that. You know, I get that, but the level design I thought could have been a lot better. It is a very boring level design, and which was disappointing, because it's like, you know, like a lot of the areas started to look too similar, right? The pathways you started to look very similar. You know, the level design in this game isn't the greatest. I actually think it's very, very weak, right? So, I think those are two of the biggest negatives for me personally, where I'm just like, I wish this could have been better. But when I'm looking at everything else in the game, from my perspective, I definitely think it was a great experience overall. Now that I'm thinking about it, there's actually one more negative that I want to speak on too. This negative is actually the facial animations and the dialogue, like the lip syncing and stuff like that. It was very off-putting. Sometimes, like watching, like when you get into like certain cutscenes and like you're seeing their faces, like because Valkyrie, she looks pretty, like the faces look cool, but then they also kind of look a little too smoothed over. It almost looks like clay. It's a little weird. So I wish they would have put a little more definition and sharpness into the faces and the facial animations. They're like non-existent almost. Definitely they need to work on the facial animations as well. That was definitely a weak point. And then the lip sync itself, it wasn't synced up. Not even like a little bit. Like it's just straight up like not there. The lip syncing in this game absolutely was not there. It was bad. It was really bad. And even a little bad to the point where like it kind of was immersion breaking in certain instances. I'm just like, damn man, like she would be talking and like the lips like sometimes would just not be it would even be done, like the lips would not even be moving in certain scenes, and it was just like, yeah, it's still like a word or two that's coming out. And it's like, come on, man, jeez. So yeah, I think those are like my three biggest negatives for Valkyrie Elysium. Now we've arrived to the score of the game. And after giving it some thought and sleeping on it, the score I'm going to give this game is a 7.6 out of 10. It's a great game. I enjoy it, but there are definitely some negatives there that I wish could have been really ironed out. This was definitely a great game, but it definitely had some things holding it back that I wish some more time would have been put on. You get what I'm saying? So yeah, that's my final score, 7.6 out of 10. I think it's a great game. I think it's a dope game. I enjoyed it, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. If you do play the game, let me know in the comments, and I appreciate you guys watching this review. It's been your boy Persona, and I'm out, guys. Peace.